Mr. Block, behind the morning paper. Can't do a thing until he gets that first cup of coffee.
I want to do that.
Jim's thoughts
Why
are
not?
far
The
away
coupon.
about
Hard times shine everywhere you go. Has it harder than ever been before? And the people are drifting from door to door, but they can't find no heaven. I don't care where they go.
Do you believe an island of hope, performance, and happiness can exist in a sea of chaos, volatility, and hopelessness? Can a person or community overcome the outside forces trying to hold them back? I believe it can, and I am going to show you how. My father had only one eye. He lost his eye when he was a teenager. He and his buddies were playing a game of baseball. My dad was the second baseman. He recalls that the sun was just setting and shining right in his eyes. A player was stealing to second, and the throw from the pitcher hit him right in the right eye, resulting in him actually seeing backwards. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks and lost that eye. Instead of being angry or feeling sorry for himself, he chose to pick up the camera and use that eye to show us the joy of our living together. Now, see what I saw by looking through my father's eye. When you hear the word segregation, does it conjure up images of riots, fire hoses, and violence? If your answer is yes, you are like many people out there. I want to show you another story from within those times and those images and the lessons learned there. My name is Stephanie. I want to tell you a story about a place called Denton, Maryland. You may not even know where it is, but it's an important place.
Scene 1, Apple, take 2.
Denton was my home. I was born there. Well, I popped out about 13 to 14 miles from the hospital in the back of a taxicab in 1950. I grew up in Denton at a time of segregation, conservative values, and a changing world. We lived on the corner of 5th and Lincoln Street, and like many families in those days, we had a porch. A significant symbol of community connectedness to be pointed out later in this story. Who I am today came from this place, where I watched my parents and their friends respond to the challenges of the time and learned the sustaining values that guided my life. However, this is not my story. It is a story about a small town. It is a story about a man behind a camera. It is a story about a family and a culture, and how each impacted the other as time passed. I came out of this story. My father was a respected colored man in a racially segregated country. How did that happen? And what did that mean? How would he respond to today's narratives? Black men scared of a white policeman? Well, I'll tell you. The following documentary is based on a series of films shot by my father from the 1950s into the 70s, as he documented every aspect of our lives, of our family and our friends: church, play, work, care, and chores. These films were taken on a Bell & Howell 8mm video camera, repaired and edited by hand by my father, with me as his apprentice. in our living room there on Lincoln Street, or wherever the film would break. Have equipment, will travel. This is Denton, Maryland currently. Population 4,418. Denton, the county seat of Caroline County, is 71% white, 22% black, and 6% Hispanic and other races. Although Denton is a great town, it faces many issues: loss of industry, lack of programs for youth, and like many other small towns, an invasion of drugs, especially heroin.
Denton's a good place, man. You know, there's a lot of drug with the heroin epidemic going on here, man, and we need help with. Me and myself, I'm a recovered addict. Was a heroin addict for 8 years. By the grace and the glory of Jesus Christ, I'm saved and a changed man. My name's Charles Jarrett. I'm 29 years old, resident of Denton, Maryland. But yeah, like I said, it's a good town, man, but a lot of things have been going on since this heroin epidemic in the United States. I mean, people criticize the people on heroin, that's the problem. Like, oh, well, they're pieces of trash, they're this and that, but it's like, nobody chooses to be an addict. They choose, you know, the party lifestyle, and the next thing you know, they're strung out on heroin, man, and it's sad, dude.
This is Denton in the 1950s, population 1,806. I didn't know the ethnic makeup of our town. I just knew there were white people and colored people. If you are starting to get the impression this is another classic story about small town values and the tough changes faced by small town America today, well, you are correct. But I go a step or two further. There are inherent truths about the values that come from these environments. They are not unlike values that come from other environments, big or small, city or town, USA. I do not know a place where it is hoped from its origins that the children grow up to be bad, to live poorly, or to not thrive. A stem cell is an undifferentiated biological cell in the human body. That is, it is not yet other kinds of tissue, but it has the remarkable potential to develop into many different cell types in the body during early life and growth. Children are the stem cells for a culture, for a community. This could be your story, for each environment or experience can differentiate you, requiring us to make a choice. And we always have a choice. What gave me the foundation from which I made my choices came from Denton. My father loved this small town. Maybe there's something you can learn from it. Maybe there's not. I guess, in essence, that is a choice too.
My grandfather always told me if somebody talks about you, just either walk away or just don't listen to what they say about you.
As you can already see, during the times I grew up there on Lincoln Street, living in families was important, and we spent lots of time together, through the good and bad. My family drank, and I witnessed my parents' relationship struggle more times than I should have as a child, without the understanding nor the reasons.
When I turned 61, I went to the church and they said it was my birthday greeting. And I asked for a minute to go to the altar and just reflect on my life. And I looked at my life. I've been blessed from the beginning of my life till now. I'm James Robert Coursey Jr. I'm the third child of James and Willa Mae Coursey. And out of 5 of us, it was 6. We lost one. She was a child. And I'm the middle child out of 5. I was blessed by being born to the parents I had, my father and my mother. And then I was blessed to be born in the family, my brothers and sisters that I had. Couldn't ask for a better group of people to be raised around. I mean, my life was blessed all the way.
You could hear people say, Oh, she's a Coursey. What does that mean? And I used to hear that when I was little, and it used to bother me. So I tried to break that stigma. I used to hear them talk about my sister because she was very popular.
The best thing was no worries. I can't remember a worry in my life from growing up and then. All I can remember is wonderful times and beautiful times. I mean, the town people, they loved us, they knew us.
So my high school years were good, but I never wanted to be labeled with that. Oh, she thinks she's something because she's a Coursey, because I was just like everybody else.
Individuals worked hard at what they could find, and they worked each and every day, and they worked in just a hard way to make sure that they could provide for their family. And you learn from seeing them work day in and day out. My mother would get up, we probably had 3 jobs. You know, some mornings we got up to go clean offices up. Actually, she was a school teacher and then had the 3 kids, 3 of us out of wedlock, and then she became a domestic until later on in life when she went back to teach school. So you could see whatever work was available, individuals did, and they did it, I think, to the best of their ability, but they did it in a way that they cared. You learned very quickly on how to work and work in a way that you were successful doing whatever your assigned tasks were. I think the issues for blacks in America today are so varied, but I think the key thing, obviously they're multi-pronged. You got drug problems, not just in the black communities, but in many communities. 2 things, I think we have to focus on God, spend more time, really looking at the blessings that we have. And then secondly, I think we really got to commit back to education. This town, as I said before, was a town that continuously pushed education. We have to focus on God, and we really have to have the black community focused on education.
We were all one America, just living on different streets. Moms and dads were community moms and dads. Not only did they keep a close eye on their own kids, they kept close watch on the kids of other families in the community.
It was a community town where the community helped raise the kids, and they were a part of the kids' life. If they seen me as a child doing something that they knew mom and dad wouldn't want me to do, they would either whip me or tell on me, or whip me and tell on me.
Whatever you did, man, I mean, if it's wrong, Mr. John down the street, he would correct you and, and beat your tail and take you, home to your parents and say, hey, I seen him do that. And your parents, right away say, oh, yeah, he done that. And say, well, okay, come on in there and get another one.
A child may have a mother and a father, but they also had lots of mothers and fathers in the community, because no matter where you went, if a person saw you doing something wrong, they had no problem correcting you, and you better listen.
It was not just the parent, it was not just the teacher, it was the neighbor, it was their friends, it was anyone who knew your parents. And parents accepted that during that time, and children knew that. And it was really important that we acted the way we would in front of our parents, because it was like having our parents around.
Hillary Clinton said that of the family you're raised by the neighborhood, well, that's the way it was. If you did something and somebody else said something, the very first thing you'd ask them to do is not to tell your mom and dad, because you can get 3 whippings. The person who caught you, then they call home, mom beat you, and if it was too bad, dad got you too.
You had to stay in your place and take the consequences.
Even though we didn't have telephones and stuff, things got back home to mom and dad real quick. So if you messed up in the community, not only did the community mothers and fathers correct you, you got it when you got home.
I did what I was supposed to do most of the time.
You were taught that you were to help other people. So that made you connected. If somebody in the community was hurting, I mean, you could see your parents going to help them. And no matter what you had, you shared. And so that really kept the community together. I don't see that now. Everybody is this is mine, I worked for it, I got it, I'm not sharing it. That we have lost that. If somebody was hurt, you were there. And this thing that, you know, when they came out, it took a village to raise a child. Oh God, we were doing that years ago, way back before that became the popular slogan. That you know, you just helped everybody, and that's what kept the communities together.
You couldn't do anything without someone saying, "I'm going to tell your mother," or "I'll tell your father," or yeah, you were on your P's and Q's whenever you walked around this community, because everyone knew everyone.
The front porch was an important place. We had community watch long before it was a new initiative and a clever sign in the front yard. While sometimes we tired of being on the porch and having to wave at every passerby, from my lens now, these 60-plus years later, it was such a focal point of community connectedness, knowing who was entering in and going from the community. A watchfulness which lend itself to protection in a simple way.
As a matter of fact, we still control the house we were born and raised in at 501 Lincoln Street. We were not letting that go either, so we still got a warm connection to our town. The people that knew us growing up, they still know us now and respect us because of our parents, because of our dad, because of our mom. They respect us.
As a child, there was an appropriateness of how you spoke, respectability, knowing your place as a child.
Children, we was taught to stay in our place and always to be kind and generous to our elders.
I have a lot of older folks that has passed away, and they had a lot to do with me growing up.
It is natural for humans to be searching for meaning, a something bigger than they are. Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, fulfilled that search for me. What is it for you?
I wanna treat everybody right until I die. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right until I die. I'm gonna watch, fight, and pray. I'm gonna watch, fight, and pray. I'm gonna watch, fight, and pray. I'm gonna watch, fight, and pray until I die. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right until I.
The church played a good role in the community because they were always there to help you, and they always saw you, and they always wanted you to come to church, and whatever and however, come to church.
And my kids was very small when we first came here to Denton. They graduated from here. I used to live over in that White House, and I went to this church here because Reverend Hawkins used to be here. And they grew up and they graduated and they done moved on. So I got 3 beautiful grandkids, Jamar, Aubrey, and Isaiah. This is the first church I came to when I first came here with my babies. And ever since then, I've been here.
Our community had pride, strong voices, and roots. We had a social boldness. There was a you can do environment, not a keep you down atmosphere. We were not a wealthy family, but thanks to my mother and father, I knew I was going to college. Did not know how or what my major would be, but I was going to college.
It was expected, yeah. You know, you go to school, get your education, go to college and come back or go somewhere and do something with whatever you did learn, you know.
It was an expectation for kids to go to college, also for some to go in service, and then some to do whatever their parents was doing, the father was doing, whatever kind of job they had. Normally the kids, you know, also did that.
Community members, let's see, the teachers. My mother was a teacher, and so I knew all the teachers, and they knew me, and it was hard to do anything wrong. You had so many eyes watching you.
That's what kept things rolling, and it gave you that respect. So when you left that little town, wherever you went, man, you learned, yes sir, yes ma'am.
So the community raised us all. I mean,
it was a very, very good atmosphere, man. You know, I think even when I went in service, I come back, and the reason why I come back because there's so much love. You know, I know what I feel. You know.
We had a resilience which came from living life together, celebrating the simple pleasures, adults wanting the same things for each of us.
We're walking over here to what we call the school light, and that was the school building. That's where my father, my Aunt Louise, my Aunt Thelma, they went, my Uncle Melvin, they went to school here. And there was a long building running with this basketball court wasn't here. And then this was all dirt. We played baseball, we played football, and we changed as the season changed. This was just where we learned how to play a lot of ball here. My name is John Edward Coursey III. I'm the fourth child, born to James R. Coursey Jr., Sr., and Willie Mae McClure Coursey. I get the third as a result of being born the month that my grandfather died. He was John Edward Coursey Sr. And so they named me the third. And my Uncle Eddie, my father's brother, is Junior, who also lived right next door to Mom and Dad. So that's how I get to be the third. So.
We would go play ball, and they had programs at the church, at the school, and all around, you know. They had the park right across from where they lived, and you could go over there and play ball and whatever, you know. But we stayed busy just being into some kind of recreation.
Used to tell people it'd be the battles between the kids. You had the kids that lived on Gay Street, the kids that lived on Lincoln Street, the kids that lived on High Street. Well, Gay Street was the newest of the streets, and it became the overpass to Denton to traffic trying to get to beach. So on Sundays coming back from like Rehoboth and Ocean City, Gay Street here would be full. It was one way, so Gay Street thought that made them pretty popular. But we tell them, you know, Gay Street might have been the center for the outsider, but Lincoln Street was the center of the town. This is where things animated. That water tower right there, well, used to overflow. And, you know, it was like it was raining. And then it would cover the whole town. I mean, it was just like rain pouring down. Most amazing thing.
As a kid, we would, the community really was our playground. We would, when I was on the town council, they'd bring up a culvert or a tunnel or a building or whatever, and I'd been on top or through all of them because that's what we played in. We only had 4 channels, I think, on television. Certainly didn't have internet, anything like that. So we made our own fun.
A typical day growing up in Denton was playing outside. You could go outside. I used to come over here to the Coursey's house a lot and play with Stephanie and Gail and Bobby and John and Stevie, and we would be on the porch next door at the Miss Anna's house and be sitting there playing jacks, or we'd be over in the field playing kickball. And we stayed outside most of the time. Only came in to go to the bathroom or get something to drink. And then when the street lights came on, you were expected to be at home.
The children found ways that were not destructive to entertain themselves. Make-up games.
Oh, I played sports. I played sports for recreation. I love basketball. I love watching football on TV back in them days. Baseball games. So that was our big thing.
We used to go in their backyard. Me and her brothers, my brothers, we'd play wiffle ball. Well, we in the white man's yard. We knocked it, he had a fence. We knocked it over the fence. Home run. Felt good about that. So, so we learned how to play.
My father completed formal school only to the 9th grade. He worked as a career mechanic at Callis and Thompson in Harrington, Delaware, about 20 miles east of Denton. In addition to having a regular job, as many of us do, he became a business owner, proprietor of the White Swan, affectionately known to everyone as the Beer Garden, a restaurant and tavern. He became a town commissioner and ultimately went on to become the first black mayor of Denton, Maryland.
They had a place where back in the day you called a beer garden. And of course, I didn't drink. But we would go in there and dance and play the jukebox and, or do whatever. I might drink a beer, I don't know, don't tell nobody.
In other words, back in the day, they called it beer gardens, where you go and drink. It was a restaurant, and a section was a beer, where you sell beer and liquor. My father served beer and stuff. And the people would say, you going to the beer garden? And we going to the beer garden, instead of tavern.
That's where everybody went, man. They go down there and he'd be behind that bar, and his wife, she used to cook, the food was good. So you could go down there and sit and play cards, and all the, just people in general would be there and, you talk about it. So it was a good place to be. Everybody knows everyone in that town.
You have seen a lot of clips about the values I learned from my father and mother as I grew up in Denton. The most important thing I learned from those experiences is how to apply the values to the choices I would make and living through happy and sad times. I am convinced that people have not paused long enough to articulate their values and then know how to use those values in their living. Now back to Denton for a moment. As with some of the people you have heard from here, I too am disappointed in some of the changes my hometown has undergone since I left it. But that is not criticism. To some extent, it is a plea for you to understand that this affects all of us.
I think it's several points Denton changed. Certainly started to change when they built the Bay Bridge.
Parents had to work, so if you got two parents, they're working, both of them are working. There was a period in the day when kids were coming home and they were there by themselves, from like 3 to 5 o'clock, and that's when the term latchkey kids started. So kids would take care of themselves. So there in itself was a change.
When I grew older and I married a Dentonian, I began to learn a lot about the town and seeing people sitting on the porches, knowing everyone, and it was just a community. But then, as Denton changed, you would walk through the streets, and I'd find myself saying more and more, "Who is that?" And they said, "Oh, they live down the street." And from a small child, I knew everyone in the town of Denton. So that is one thing that really changed, and today, it is a drastic change for me.
Brought people down to live in the area that hadn't been here before. Before the bridge, really, we were more oriented towards Philadelphia than we were for Baltimore. After the bridge, I think the orientation went to Baltimore, instead of Philadelphia.
The abuse laws. Because see now, when I was in elementary school, the principal could beat you, the teacher could beat you. You understand? And I don't mean beat in a way to where you beat, but like they could discipline you. Let me just put it like that. And when kids, when they changed that law in the 60s, and kids realized, and they look at you and tell you don't touch me, you don't touch me. I mean, as much as like grab a kid by the shoulder, put a firm hand can change a mind, especially a young mind. You know what I'm saying? So that's when it started to change.
But it certainly brought a lot of cars, a lot of traffic here. I think the very first car that ever showed up in Denton was on its way to the beach.
I have been called a lot of things in my life: daughter, student, wife, mother, sissis, doctor, an expert, and at times some things not so nice. I was strong in not letting others define who I was and am, like my dad and like my mother. I am Dr. Stephanie Bailey, an agent for healing, and by permission am showing up each day to serve and be used. A public health expert, a successful leader, a proud mother and wife. I am a respected, worthy, and influential leader, unabashedly using my positive voice as a change agent now. Who are you? I was born in a taxicab on the way to the hospital into a turbulent world. I have two parents who had every excuse not to succeed, but they chose otherwise. They chose to raise their 6 children in a nurturing environment, to hold us accountable for our actions and at times those of others, to not let the world of segregation defer our dreams.
Well, when I came back from Vietnam, I had coffee thrown in my face.
Segregation does come with the play of racism.
Denton was divided. White stayed above Gay Street or on Gay Street and above, and black stayed below. And we just didn't communicate.
I would say right here, man, Market Street splits the town. But you got your African Americans over there where most of the drugs are in this town, over there. And then you got over here, you got a lot of poor people in the town. Like I said, back here you got, I would say, middle class, upper class, and then over on this side, which is very small, you got a little mix of both.
We went to a concert at the Harrington Fair. Now I'm about 15 now, 16 because I was driving, 16, 17. And we went out to Williston Lake, a few miles outside of town, and the white folks ran us away from there. We went to see Rare Earth at the Harrington Fair, man, the greatest concert we've seen in my life, man. And we came back in town, gathered right here. Well, let's go out to Williston. We came back in here and gathered right here. My father, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Rowland Self, and a bunch of the men got down because we were out here in the streets crying and literally upset because we hadn't experienced that kind of thing. But I mean, white folks told us we had to leave from out there. And we took swimming lessons out there, so we wasn't thinking that it was taboo for us to go out there.
I remember my mother telling me the story of going uptown and how someone kind of insulted her because she was an African American, and that she laid them out.
During Mr. Jimmy's time, it was a segregated type of thing. You go to the movie, you got to go to the balcony.
Early 60s, it certainly changed. I remember the Freedom Riders coming to Denton. Nothing negative about it. It was just it was a for us kids, and I can't tell you how the adults viewed it, but for us kids, it was a fascination.
I remember the bus pulling up, and there was tension. There was tension. I could feel it as a child from my parents, and there was talk. You could hear them talking, but you didn't exactly know what they were saying about it, but you knew it was tension.
You know, I mean, it was an event because we didn't have anything else going on. So we just went up and watched, and it was fun. Probably in '67 when they had full integration in schools.
I went to an all-black school. Whites went to an all-white school. In Caroline County, all blacks had to go to Lockman High. I don't care how far you live from it. All whites went to North Carolina High or Colonel Richardson.
I mean, I like the fact that I could go to any store, try on anything I want, go to any restaurant, sit down and blah, blah, blah. This is good. But when it came to education, I think we lost for our black kids. I was afraid when they integrated the schools and I was sent to the southern end of the county. When they integrated the schools, they did away with Lockburn, so we have 2 schools. Now we have North Carolina High School at the northern end, and we have Colonel Richard at the southern end.
Segregation, like I said, I started in a segregated school. It was voluntary integration when I was in the 2nd grade. And my best friend that lived next door to me, Vanessa, she went to what we call Denton Elementary. And my mother wouldn't let me go because she said it wasn't time.
When they integrated schools in 1967, we were very, I mean, the kids in the black community, the kids in the white community, we were, as a general rule, very nervous about this whole thing. And we went out of our way, and it worked really well. I say for me, integration was the better things that ever happened to me.
They integrated the schools, and I didn't think that was a very good thing. You know, I always thought they should keep them like they were.
After we integrated, I see that our black kids, we lost. And when I say we lost, is because when our students went to the white schools, it wasn't enough. After a while, it wasn't enough black teachers, just like it is now. It's not enough in the school system for kids that look like, they need to be able to see somebody that looks like them.
Started going to school, with the other kids. They tried to do exactly what they were doing. Everything wasn't good. They didn't like you race-wise, And to me, it was, I just didn't like it.
What I learned from my life in Denton, and what I am reminded of every time I watch my father's videos and the interviews on this film, is quite often we let the world define who we are, assume those roles, and let ourselves become programmed into living them out as individuals, as neighborhoods, and as communities, even as a race. Do you ever wonder, how do things seem to get the way they do? It seems as if you go to sleep one day and wake up the next, and things not only have changed, but are out of control.
Somewhere along the line, we dropped the ball as being the head of the household. I blame my generation because we took what the generations before my generation set up for us, for the civil rights and all that. We got so many rights and so many ways of doing things and we've tried to relate it to our kids, and we didn't do a good job as being parents. Some of us did, but some of us didn't.
Complacency is an enemy of what once was.
Black families today, there's no unity. Well, I guess because of the new laws that have passed where if you beat a child, you can get arrested and all that. And we're not raised by the community. Some blacks, I'm not saying all blacks, don't really realize what our history is, what we really had to go through to be right here. And I think if they knew, they would change the attitude. They would know how important education is, how important it is not to do some of the things that they do. That's all.
We get tired of being on the porch and waiting. We close one eye and then the other, substituting a phone camera's view without the context or the caring. We remove our porches and even look the other way.
Back then, today, today you can't even, nobody don't say hello, how you doing, or, if Mr. Jones living next door, you're gonna know the people living next door to you. Here, man, if somebody look at you wrong, they want to, beat you up, it ain't no, it's no more love, man. It's like they forgot to keep that respect going on, somewhere along the line, I would say, if I had, was asked where I want to live, and the best time I had in my life, man, was the 60s up into the 80s. Because then you didn't have that, you didn't have, oh, man, you step on my feet, and somebody pull a gun and blow your head away, because you didn't have that. If you did have that kind of encounter, you go and do it like a young man and you get your behind and kick the next day, you're still gonna shake, so it's not no togetherness, Most people, it's not only a lady being raised a kid, then it's also the men end up doing it, because I had to do it, in a sense.
What have we lost because of diminishing direct communication? The answer: our community, our circle of influence, a generation or two of children. Can we recover, recapture, reclaim? Out of the past, we can find our future. My father, and my mother too, I might add, chose not to be defined by the world nor the times. They chose to define themselves and to have the strength and courage to own their reality. I learned early that being me and upholding my values serve me best. The same can be true for you. Back to Denton. Despite the troubles it faces today and the associated apathies felt in its toughest times, it has a greatness as a small town on the eastern shore of Maryland, a greatness I claim can be translated to any town, any city, anywhere, USA. For no matter what you talk about, if it is poverty, infant mortality, AIDS, homelessness, drugs, illiteracy, dropouts, teenage pregnancy, unemployment, violence, poor housing, lack of access to health care, opioid crisis, sex trafficking, poor performing institutions, obesity, hunger, or politics. We are talking about the neighborhoods and streets. We are talking about our communities, like Denton, and our children. We are talking about a place where old values are meeting the new forces face to face, not as a matter of choice, but as a matter of survival. Being in communities is important for human existence. They are a reflection of the people who live there. If the people become apathetic and hopeless, then so goes the city. But it works the other way too. If people choose to define their city by hope and values, then too goes the city. Some will do this and prosper, others will not. John Maxwell said, "If there is hope in the future, there is power in the present." You are present now in a place in which the narrative tomorrow could be different. Your choice. He had a dreamer's soul. He wanted to be a mechanical engineer, but had to drop out of school in the 9th grade to help his family. He wanted to volunteer in the draft for armed services as World War II broke out, but couldn't because of his lost right eye. He wished he could have gone on the spaceship Sputnik because of his fascination with outer space. Other dreams, as it turned out, were his to grasp.
When they died, I felt so alone.
He always worked hard. At age 14, he established his first business, a shoe shine stand, which he built himself outside of the neighborhood store.
But my dad was always there in my life.
And for $4,200, the Beer Garden, a restaurant and tavern, was owned by my dad, James Coursey Sr.
The kindness that he showed that day for me when my dad died.
My father was known for his decency, fairness, trustworthiness, and caring, not for his color or race.
I loved her. Oh, I love my mom and dad.
He welcomed conversations of all sorts, practicing diversity and inclusion before it became such a deliberate act of today.
And yet, I remember standing in the doorway of your private dwelling, looking out of the window at the deterioration of our youth. I look at the plants and baskets that say, "Get well," as the baseball game on television illuminates the tears raining from my eyes. I sit on the dark blue carpet that scratches my thigh. All of my cousins, your grandchildren smiling on the wall, yet frowning upside down at the sight of your body dying from within. Look at you, your fair brown skin touched with wrinkles, the square glass resting over your gentle eyelids. The hands, so thick and large, proving 76 years of hard work. The legs have become tired and weak. You still have on your thin black church socks that cover your worn feet. I can still hear your voice vibrating my heart as I look at your concerned face and droopy cheeks. Your eyes now open as you feel my presence. I stare into your missing eye, trying to see what evil has brought you to this state. You cast a boyish smile, not opening your mouth because your teeth are not in. I walk over and place love on your cheek, knowing that you will not be here much longer.
Was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father.
I'm Stephanie. I want to thank you for watching this film. I want to share with you what I want you to feel, what I want you to know, and what I want you to do because you have watched through my father's eye. I want you to feel inspired by a story of a black girl who humbly excelled because of those humble beginnings. I want you to feel inspired by the story of a black man who loved where he came from and did not let lack of education, the color of his skin, nor having only one eye get in his way. I want you to feel there is a message from my story to yours. I want you to feel hope from a story of a small town which changed over time but holds as an example of small town anywhere USA, holding the seed of a culture yet to be differentiated. What I want you to know, I want you to know that you can soar from where you've come. The power of choice is yours, and oh, is that so powerful. My father leaves a legacy of strength, joy, and what could be, all wrapped up in attitude. How is your attitude serving you? My father exampled being a good father, a good brother to his 11 siblings, a good neighbor, a good community member, a servant, a good man. His resiliency was challenged when he lost an eye, when he lost his youngest daughter at age 1, after his business burned down, and after he himself was burned beyond recognition. He loved the place where he was, and the place loved him. What was in this individual was in the community. What is in you is in your community. I want you to know that values are immutable. Communities have the ability to protect, to love, to give opportunity, and they should. What do I want you to do as a result of seeing this film? I want you to make your world change. Remember, recapture, reclaim, and preserve. The seeds are there. What I want you to do, always do your best, because you never know whose eye is looking at you.